Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, host of the Sports Vibe, saying you're blessed, highly favored, magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also, you know what? I'll get to all the other shows I host at the end, and we're going to get right down to sports. And all the support we get, we appreciate it. We've got WB Whitted on the line. How you doing, WB?
I'm doing fantastic. This is playoff time, man. There's nothing better than a good series, and we got a few of them now.
Absolutely, we got a lot of good series, but what we're going to start off with is this thing called Deflategate. What's your take on it, man?
It's pretty crazy. First of all, because nobody had even really heard of this deflating thing until this became an issue. The Colts apparently been some rumors around the NFL for quite some time, and the Colts had actually alerted the NFL prior to their game in the playoffs that they felt that the Patriots had been deflating balls below the minimum PSI requirements. And as this whole thing has come out, as the Ted Wells report has come out, it became more and more evident and more clear. Well, the findings for the Ted Wells report were that Tom Brady more than likely knew that some feasance was going on, and he got punished. He got slammed for 4-game suspension, first-round pick, 4th-round pick, and a hefty fine for the Patriots. So obviously the NFL took this very seriously. There's an integrity of the game issue in terms of manipulating the materials with which you use to play the game, and they took it seriously, and Tom Brady and the New England Patriots paid the price.
Okay, so let's do some peeling off of this different aspects of this. Now, first things first, is it really a big thing that the balls were not properly inflated to the specification?
Well,
really,
so the Wells
really and truly.
It's hard to tell, from especially from 10,000 feet away. I'm an NFL quarterback. Don't know if you can tell or not. I've been working out a little bit. But not an NFL quarterback, so I'm not 100% sure how much of a difference that it makes in terms of throwing the ball on a regular basis. I will say this: if you would go through the entire machinations and go through of trying to do this, the Wells report, it kind of outlines how this went. They took the balls, had the balls inspected, and then the team or the player, the equipment manager, for about 2 or 3 minutes, the referees that already inspected the ball took them to an undisclosed location and brought them back. So if you're willing to do all of that to make sure that the balls were at what you felt were the ideal level of pressure, it had to make a difference. I don't know how much of a difference, and it's difficult to quantify how much of a difference that was, because we're kind of in uncharted territory, which is why the punishment, no one really had a really good idea about what the punishment would be. But if you're willing to do all of that to try to, if you want to call it gamesmanship, if you want to call it cheating, that had to make some sort of difference for you.
Okay, so 4 games for this, the NFL is always a very interesting beast, let's put it that way, because Brady gets more games suspended than Ray Rice did for his incident. What does that say about the integrity of the NFL, and especially Roger Goodell?
Well, I think that you kind of have to look at, especially when it comes to suspensions, pre and post Ray Rice. I think pre-Ray Rice, you had a certain allotment of games that guys were getting suspended for on and off field behavior. This Brady, Deflategate, this whole thing kind of falls somewhere in the gray area between on and off field conduct policy. And so I think Goodell feels that he has to come out strongly against everything now. I think that because he was viewed as being weak on a myriad of issues, but specifically as it pertained to the Ray Rice incident, I think now that he feels like I don't want to say an overreact, but he has to come out against everyone. And so I think you're going to see that moving forward. I think there's going to be a lot longer suspensions for anything that he has any sort of judgment over. I think that in this particular case, this is going to go back to an appeal, and an appeal in this case will go to an arbiter. And I think that they're going to have have this out. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to stay at 4 games, because there is some ambiguity as it pertains to whether or not some of the how deflated the balls were just a natural occurrence in science that would just naturally occur on the day of. So there's going to be a lot of that, and they're going to have to find that out. I know there's been some talk about Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, maybe suing them, but as a general rule, judges don't like to get involved in things that have been collectively bargained. Just as a matter of law, they would prefer things between the union, between the union and management that have already been collective bargained to have their dispute to have some sort of dispute resolution that's been specified in the CBA, to have that work its way out over there. So, but there's going to be more of a process. This is not just something that's going to come down and they're not going to fight it. The Patriots will absolutely fight this.
What do you feel, or what are your thoughts on Tom Brady's handling of this situation and his responses?
It's difficult. There is part of the suspension was the fact that there was a lot of cover up, that they felt that the Patriots weren't very forthcoming, that Tom Brady wasn't willing to share some of the information that he had. The Patriots didn't make some of the equipment guys available as frequently as the NFL wanted to during the course of litigation. So some of it is that. So some of it is, if they had maybe cooperated early, the suspension wouldn't be as. And so you have to take that into account. The NFL talked about how they felt that the Patriots weren't on board with this entire investigation. And so it became an adversarial relationship where perhaps it didn't need to be. Now, it's always easier to go back, in retrospect and say, well, if you had helped us out earlier, then this penalty wouldn't be as strong. We'll never know. But it is a little surprising that the Patriots and Tom Brady specifically were so unwilling to help them in this uncovering and this investigation process.
This is very interesting. How much does this taint, if at all, in your opinion, Tom Brady's legacy?
It's very, very difficult to kind of figure that out, especially right this very second while he's still playing. I think that it's going to be one of those things that's always brought up, regardless of how. I don't think most people think that Tom Brady would be a multi Super Bowl winning quarterback without Deflategate, or however you want to say it, because there's also kind of no way to tell how long this has been going on, which is also kind of a little bit scary, because you don't know how long this entire process has been going. I think he's still one of the best ever, but you can't have a conversation about him without bringing this up. There's the whole Spygate incident that, while that might not be specifically on Tom Brady, it is also going to get brought when you talk about New England, you talk about Brady, and you talk about Belichick. So it's very, very difficult to figure now, because we're still in the course of their careers. It is absolutely going to be noted every time you bring up the legacy of the great Tom Brady.
You mentioned Bill Belichick. Were you surprised that he didn't receive any fines or suspension?
Well, in the Wells report, it kind of exonerated to a certain extent, because it talked about how he didn't find any evidence to associate Bill Belichick with this practice at all. That the only real evidence that he has, circumstantial as it may be, were text messages between Tom Brady and the equipment manager, or small bits of circumstantial evidence. There was no evidence tying Bill Belichick to this at all. Now, just thinking about it logically, it can be sometimes tough to figure, hey, Bill Belichick didn't know about this, and he's one of the most micromanaging sorts of coaches that I have, that knows everything about everything that's happening with his team. So it can be difficult to believe that he didn't know, but this is such a new and gray area where you're not 100% sure how many people knew. Like, yeah, the thinking is that the equipment managers and Tom Brady knew. Could somebody else have known? Surely, but because there's no evidence, it's hard to tell. That's such a minute detail that even Bill Belichick, I can see him completely miss all of this.
Okay. At the end of the day, how many games, if any, will do you feel Brady will serve as a suspension?
They said 4. I kind of feel like that's going to get reduced during arbitration, but I can't even give you a number. I mean, I would just be picking a number out of the air because this, like I keep reiterating, it's really different and new thing. There is some language in the CBA about when dealing with balls and whether or not if you've done anything to alter them at all, that there is a fine of $25,000, but that is not an exhaustive number. That's not an exhaustive penalty. It's simply what the NFL can do. So some people were thinking that this was just going to be a fine and everyone was going to move on. I think because they found out so late, I think because they turned out to be the Super Bowl champions, and because this is an integrity issue of, hey, does this change the effects of some of these games? Because keep in mind, Baltimore lost on a 1-possession game. So like while the Patriots absolutely smoked the Colts, the thinking is that this has been going on for quite some time. One of the guys actually referred to himself as the deflator before season even started. So the thinking is that this has been going on at least as long as the season was. Does that change that Baltimore Ravens game? Do they still win? I mean, that's one of the more difficult things to figure out exactly how much of a difference this makes. When you're talking about maybe this team wouldn't have made the Super Bowl without this cheating, it does kind of put the NFL in a corner where you have to come out strongly against this, because regardless of what people might think about the athletes off the field, the general rule of everyone is trying their hardest, everyone's trying their best, they're trying in good faith, those tenements can't be struck down. And if they are, then you got a larger issue in terms of your viewership and the game. And so I think that also attributed to why the NFL felt like it really needed to come out strong, because that's a quarter of the season, and that's huge.
Absolutely. Well, we'll certainly keep an eye on this story as it progresses, because I think it's going to be around for a while. And Mr. Kraft is involved with personally. Doesn't go. He doesn't give up till he wins. So that we're going to be continuing to chat about this. So let's throw it over to the hardwood, and a game that's going on right now in a series that has been, wow, one heck of a series. Cleveland Cavaliers and the Chicago Bulls. What are your takes on this series so far, man?
It's like a lot of these series. It's really unfortunate that injuries have kind of changed the whole tenor of the series. Before we had Kevin Love, he got hurt at the end of the Boston series. Apparently, Kyrie Irving, and you're starting to see him kind of drag and not play as well. So really, you've got LeBron James, and then Iman Shumpert in Game 3 hurts his groin. Like this kind of team looks markedly different from the team in the regular season. And so all of this is kind of mounted. And so that means you have to have a great LeBron James game just to beat Chicago. On Chicago's end, they've got Paul Gasol. He recently got hurt, and he hasn't played the last 2 games. And so, you're seeing it's absolute star time. And I can't remember a time where I've seen game-winning walk-off shots in a 7-game series. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Some of the actual aesthetics of the game haven't been great. There have been some really, really tough stretches, especially in Game 4. I think if Chicago ends up losing this series, they're going to look back at Game 4 as the game that they were supposed to win. There was a moment there at the end of the 3rd quarter where Cleveland is really struggling to score. Chicago has a lead but can't extend it. Cleveland goes something like 7-8 minutes of game time without a field goal, and they just could not extend that lead. And it ends up that, famously LeBron hits the game winner in the corner. But there was a lot of stuff that where you're thinking, this is where Chicago finally makes it. Cleveland shooting below 40%, shooting like 20-some% from the 3-point line. That was the game. Take hold of this series, that take it by the throat. So if they end up losing it, that Game 4 is absolutely going to be where they look back and just kind of shake their heads.
What were your thoughts about Friday night, Rose hitting game-winning shot, then LeBron hitting a game-winning shot on Sunday, and also basically nixing his coach's play and saying, no, we're not going to run that?
Well, look, David Blatt has caught a lot of flack lately. I've never seen a coach as a winner of a playoff game catch more flack, other than David Blatt. He had some really, really tough stretches right there. He tried to call timeout when they didn't have one. He had to call several timeouts to get the ball inbounded, which is why he didn't know they didn't have a timeout, because they went into that situation with 3. And with 1.5 seconds left, he tried to run a play with LeBron as the inbounder. Those are all pretty major gaps in terms of what you don't want your coach to do. Now, he is a rookie NBA coach. While he has had a lot of successes in Russia and in Europe, he still is very trying to get his head around what it means to be a coach in the NBA, because this is the highest level of basketball in the world. Keep this in mind as well. He wasn't the guy that was supposed to coach this Cleveland team. The Cleveland team he was with Kyrie Irving and Deion Waiters and whoever their first pick was going to be. That was who he was brought in to coach. LeBron coming onto the scene completely changed the complexion of the team and completely changed what this team was capable of doing late in the postseason. This Cleveland team that he signed on for was not going to be in the postseason, and if they were, they certainly weren't going to be competing for a title. So he's definitely in some uncharted waters. And so it's a little unfair for people to hold him up to a standard of, oh, well, Greg Popovich wouldn't do this. Yes, absolutely. He's not those guys. But the smaller stuff, the things that you would want any coach, any NBA coach to do, he failed on. And that's tough, because he already came in with kind of 2 strikes against him, because people didn't think that he was the right guy for the job. And unfortunately, Game 4 kind of illuminated some of those issues that people were having. So everybody gets better at their job. Everybody gets a mistake, and his multiple mistakes thankfully weren't compounded by a loss. He's able to move on from that. And if he's able to do some things and maybe figure out a way to win, all is forgiven, because winning is this it cures everything.
Do you see any scenario that he's not back as Cleveland's coach next year?
Man, he can't have another major misstep like he did in Game 4. He simply can't. Now, nobody likes to pay multiple guys. There is that no to not coach, and if he gets fired, you'll be paying him for the rest of his contract. He's got to win. He needs to win, at least go to the finals. Now, that's a little bit more difficult now, because you're factoring in things like injuries, but you don't have to look that far in the league to see, winning 2 games will not your place as a coach, because Oklahoma City, who did Scott Brooks, I thought did a massive job considering the injuries he had to deal with. Monty was fired today from the New Orleans Pelicans, even though he was given the vote of confidence by his owner 2 weeks ago, because they were very clear with he and GM, if you don't make the playoffs, you won't be back. He makes the playoffs, you're still in that unemployment line. So it's cutthroat in the NBA, absolutely.
Okay. Well, by the time we come on again for our next episode of the Sports Vibe, this series will be done. Where do you think it's going to go? In light that Cleveland, I believe, is ahead by 10 points at halftime live tonight.
Yeah, I picked LeBron and company to win in 7 games. I'm going to stay with that. It's because I feel like Chicago is a more talented team. They have the best player in the series. And for what Chicago really hasn't been able to get consistent effort from the bench, hasn't been able to get consistent effort on off, and they'll go outs. You saw one earlier this game. You saw one in Game 4. And that trouble, what Ailing and Paul Gasol hurt, I think they get a better shot. So I'm going to stick with Cleveland in 7.
Okay. Let's talk Clippers Rockets. Been basically a one-sided series. What are your take on it? What's your take on it?
I'm sorry, you were asking me about Houston?
No, yeah, I was asking you about Clippers and Rockets.
Well, I mean, that's been more disappointing than anything else. Especially watching Houston kind of fall down in those games and just refusing to get back up. You saw it with, whether Chris Paul was there and Chris Paul wasn't there, Clippers kept fighting and they kept just grinding it out. And so you've seen guys like Austin up in their place. And I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe it's just the missing Patrick. Defensively, that team doesn't look the same as it did earlier this season. Without Beverly as their best perimeter defender, even toughness than I gave him credit for, that Houston team seems so capable of just giving up. I mean, I would hate to say that any professional athlete would give up, especially in a playoff, but it kind of feels like that every time that they get down, they just kind of, 5 points, 10 points, and then all of a sudden it's just a 20-point laugher and resistance from Houston. And that's disappointing to see from a team that's so. I expect them to go ahead and start fishing and go on vacation, because I just don't see them beating this Clippers team, because I just haven't seen anything to wants to be there.
So looking at this series, especially the first game, how the Houston couldn't take it, and Chris Paul wasn't even playing. What does this say for the future Dwight Howard?
I don't know. I read a very interesting report, and I'm sorry I can't remember the author, but they just called him a front runner, in which, when things are going well, the player, and when things are not going well, he can be a negative for your team. And Dwight Howard, I think James too, especially when you consider the fact that he was an MVP in the season. This seemed like his real break. And now you kind of question both of them, I would think, because neither has played particularly well in this series. And, I think that part of it also the fact that in their first round, they got a Dallas team that was still trying itself with Rondo, with the whole Rondo thing. And, we don't know what we're going to get from him, and kind of a limpy, gimpy Dallas team. And so maybe they got a little bit further than normally would have. And so when they walked up on the Clippers, who had a hellacious series versus the San Antonio Spurs, they were just taken aback. And you can kind of see that whenever they get down, it just seems like they're willing to there's so much fight in the Clippers. If there's one thing that I have noticed and that I do respect, is that for a long time we were kind of considered that team that was very, very talented and very flashy and fun to watch, but not necessarily very tough. And they've shown a lot of tough. Absolutely. So, I mean, I hate to make this all about what Houston is doing, but the Clippers absolutely have shown me a lot.
Okay. So basically, you've said, Houston, get out your fishing rods.
Yeah, I'd like to be wrong. I just don't think I am.
All right, good stuff. Well, let's go to the Hawks and the Wizards. Very interesting series. And the truth hitting his his bank shot, but then last night the Hawks coming back. This is a really tough series, and I've been keeping an eye on it because I don't know, it could go either way. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay.
It's unfortunate that John Wall isn't in this series, because I feel like Washington at full strength, talented as anybody, and would be a very, very honorable representative conference in the finals. Unfortunately, he's hurt, and no one has a really good timetable on if or when he'll be back. Kudos to Ramon Sessions and the rest of those Wizards for really playing well. Bradley Beal has been an absolute now and has really played well, as has Paul come around more recently. They're giving Atlanta, and the Hawks, they dug deep last game and got a win. in. They've been a little disappointing, I think, in terms of they were wire-to-wire Eastern Conference #1 all year, and they've been. I don't know if it's just because they hadn't been, hadn't been in the playoffs with any real sort of expectations. They kind of feel like they were relaxed a little bit heading into this series. And I think they kind of got hit in the mouth. And I think they're finally responding. You're seeing, especially Jeff Teague, very, very aggressive. Horford and Millsap have since followed suit. And so now you're starting to see that full Hawks kind of thing going on. It'll be interesting to see if the Hawks do get out of this series, whether or not they start the session of kind of laid back and relax. I still have a hard time believing that they'll lose Aaron John Wall, though.
Very tough for them not to have Wall, but they're putting up a heck of a fight.
Absolutely, and that says a whole bunch about their coach Randy Whitman. He's got them still with that next man up mentality, which players when your best player goes down.
But are you that surprised about Atlanta? Because many people were saying before, pardon me, the series started, they have to play a different type of game in the playoffs rather than their style during the regular season. What are your thoughts?
I guess I thought that because they had been regular season, I thought that they would be here. I thought that the Eastern Conference Finals would kind of be the litmus test. I thought they'd be able to get past Washington. I was just I had maybe overestimated Atlanta a little bit. One of the things that made the Hawks really good throughout the regular season was the fact that bench production. So Mike Scott, Dennis Schroeder, some of those guys coming off the bench were still getting major minutes. And I remember very clearly them asking, I think it was DeMar Carroll or one of the players, like, well, who's the guy for you? Who's for you? And kind of to a man, everyone has said, the thing that makes us dangerous is he needs to be that guy for us. Doesn't really work that way in the playoffs. It can't be any given night. It really kind of needs to be one guy, or at the very most two. Platoon system where you're getting a ton of late from rookies, or you're getting a ton of late minutes from journeyman guys. You got to have the one guy. I think the last game kind of showed me, I think Jeff Teague wants to be that one guy on that team that can get his shot or get shots for people whenever he comes across half court. If he takes the mantle and takes the responsibility of being the star, a star on this team, because Horford and Millsap are stars on this team. But if Teague takes the mantle as I am the guy on this team, I think this team will be a lot better off moving forward than if they try to do some kind of, player by. No, you need one guy in the playoffs.
All right. Well, let's wind it up with Warriors and Grizzlies. This has been quite the battle, but the Warriors came back in the last game and it showed what they're all about. Do you feel that it's now the Warriors series to win or lose?
Absolutely. One of the cool things, actually, in the last game was the fact that Steve Kerr, another key coach, switched Andrew Bogut over to Tony Allen, and which allowed Andrew Bogut to kind of roam around and be this center fielder. Tony Allen, as good as he is on defense, is kind of the offense, and so they've been able to and so he can play almost 5 against 4 on the Grizzlies had the ball. On the other side, Steph Curry, he decided to be a lot more aggressive. And it's not just shooting the ball. When he would come off those high pick and rolls, he's not just looking to pull the more. He's probing, he's moving, he's looking at that Grizzlies defense. And so now you're getting to see all of those shooters. Klay Thompson didn't have a particularly good game, but he did get better and cleaner look he had. You saw that team, you saw the pace that they liked. They kind of helter-skelter up and down. You saw the state team again that you saw in game 1 of this series. And now it's really, really cool because you between the coaches and you're seeing these active game up. whatever Hawks, I think a lot of times people have that about Golden State as well. And had any real sort of resistance all year. They haven't really been deep in the playoffs any significant amount of time. And so people were wondering, well, there's a team that's going to illuminate or highlight how tough their opposition, absolutely the Memphis Grizzlies. And they responded with a real showing in Game 4, really showed me a lot. They're not a jump shooting team, as a lot of analysts like to kind of call them. And you're not going to – they're here to fight. They're here to play. And unlike a Houston Rockets team, they got up off the canvas and they started swinging. So I still like Golden State just because they're capable of high-scoring games. If the Grizzlies win, they're going to have to keep it low possession. They're going to have to turn Golden State over. They're going to have to make it their type of game. But what for to me was that they can win any way in any place, and I would really like seeing that from them.
Out of the series that are left, do you expect any of the lower seed teams to win? Or which one has the best chance of winning out of the lower seed teams?
Man, that's a good question. Well, the best chance, I guess, would have to go to Chicago. They're in a dogfight. I know that they're down in Game 5 or 10, but while they're the lower seed, I don't think that if you were to reseed them, they still would be because of the injuries to the Cavaliers. It's not the same. They're just not the squad anymore. I would have to go Chicago with the best chance of winning.
Excellent. Well, before we wind up another edition of the Sports Vibe, any last takes you want to give our audience?
I will say that the Canelo Alvarez-James Kirkland fight that I talked about last week absolutely lived up to third round knockout. I mean, just an absolute fest. You saw two guys that absolutely wanted to fight, and the viewership for that fight really, really high. And so I talked earlier about Mayweather and Pacquiao being a really good marketing tool. Great. Maybe it kind of got boxing national collective conscious again. So it'll be interesting watching moving forward. There's some good fights on the horizon. It'll be interesting moving forward if that trend continues.
All right, good stuff. If people want to touch base with you, how can they do it, sir?
Way is to go on Twitter at WBHU alum. That's at DHUALUM from 9 to 11 every Saturday, 9 to 11 Eastern Standard Time. Just go to www.thesportshopradio.com and click listen. Or you can catch my podcast on iTunes. He's the producer, I'm the host. That's He's the producer, I'm the host.
Good stuff. Well, I'm Dr. Vibe here. I'm host and producer of the Sports Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also producer and co-host of the weekly podcast, live podcast every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for a proposal for a White House Council on Boys and Men. Also, I'm the producer and host of the weekly Black Men's Roundtable on most Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. called Do You Know What Time It Is? And we do want to apologize. We had some technical challenges or audio challenges with this Google Hangout, but we'll be putting up a MP3 version if the audio was a little bit challenging. So we can't do much about it because that's in Google's hands. But as always, I like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You are a magnet for miracles and your solution for someone's problem. God bless. Peace be well and keep the faith. Bye-bye. And thanks for all your support. Take care.